Welcome back. Here's a doozy for you. A parked car suddenly bursts into flames, and there's no official report indicating arson. So the owner's alleging something else is to blame.
In a First Alert 6 investigation, our Mike McKnight says that vehicle owner may not be alone.
It's scary.
A 4 in the morning photo from March shows Omaha firefighters dousing flames. But witness Sheila Lee tells the car owner about a startling start to the fire.
I heard a big boom before I looked out my window. Balls of flames, about like 12 foot.
The fire department incident report doesn't give a cause, but owner Laura Morton had the 2025 Chevrolet Trax.
The glove box was melted to the floor.
Moved into an apartment complex garage, she says, to preserve evidence.
I think it was a manufacturer defect.
General Motors paid garage rental for an in-person investigation, which denied her claim. GM states because the parked car had been off several hours, the exhaust and turbocharger would have cooled and could not have caused the fire.
I want a better investigation. I think they should have been more quick to react to something like this. It could have been very dangerous if anyone was in or around the vehicle.
Laura has contacted the firm involved in a Delaware class action suit against General Motors, alleging problems with the 1.2-liter three-cylinder engine, though most of those cases involve running, not parked cars.
Often an owner will report hearing a loud bang and then sudden fluid loss, sudden deceleration, and unfortunately sometimes the vehicle is becoming engulfed in flames.
The flames bursting from Laura's vehicle caused collateral damage. Look how it melted the front of the car parked in the next stall over. And the owner of this vehicle feels her insurance shouldn't have to pay for repairs because she's an innocent victim. The burning car has liability coverage, but without a determined cause, the policyholder isn't liable.
I was told by her insurance company that it was an act of God, so it wouldn't be covered with her insurance. It would be covered with mine because I have full coverage, but I'd have to pay the deductible.
Brenda can't afford repairs on her car that she's given a name.
My toasted marshmallow.
Laura Morton says she's not going soft on her claim that the manufacturer's investigation into the intense fire hasn't been intense enough.
They need to take this more seriously.
Your 132nd in Harrison, Mike McKnight, First Alert 6.
General Motors sent the reasons for denial to the Nebraska Attorney General after the owner filed a complaint. GM won't say how it analyzed the fire. Laura Morton says she did not have comprehensive coverage, so her insurance won't replace the vehicle.